Well, I think many fans are starting to feel like the MCU is starting to have some big problems, and as we dig further into the multiverse, Phase 5 and beyond, Marvel definitely needs to make some corrections, and I wanted to take a couple minutes about what I think Marvel can do to right the ship, get things moving in the right direction, and restore the previous, gravitas the whole franchise had. Let's dive in. Now, there's many people who really do believe that the end is near for Marvel Studios. To be fair, they have had a couple of critical flops and some underwhelming box office returns, but let's be real. In comparison, the Marvel movies are still doing very well compared to other movies, and for the most part, they are all fairly profitable. Now, I think their biggest challenge is, as of right now, we are about a third of the way through this multiverse saga, and a lot of interest for this story is already starting to wane. And I think it's actually for some really good reasons. Now, we have heard that Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars have lost their writers and are headed in a different direction, and I think Marvel Studios is making some adjustments in order to ensure Phase 5 and Phase 6 definitely lands with a bang, keeps fans happy, and I think there's a couple of key things they need to do to make this happen. One of those things is, honestly, they need to stop introducing so many new characters. Along the path in Phase 4, Marvel has introduced more new characters than the old MCU had altogether. Moon Knight, She-Hulk, Shang-Chi, Namor, Star Fox, Hercules. There are tons of new Marvel characters showing up, and I do think this is driving a little bit of a wedge between new fans and their understandings of all these new characters. There's also a huge delay in follow-up. When Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch first appeared in the Winter Soldier's post-credit scene, we knew the story was going to continue in Age of Ultron. Now, most of these characters are showing up, then disappearing, and I think this has left fans pretty confused on why Marvel even introduced them in the first place. Now, I think another big area where Marvel needs to make some adjustments with all these new characters is they focused on the characters and not where the story is actually headed. Now, we've had some great stories in Phase 4 and leading into Phase 5, especially from Loki, but overall, the first 3 phases of the MCU had a pretty linear story that was easy for most fans to follow. We learn about Thanos' plan to collect the Infinity Stones and how he intended to snap out half of existence. Now, the Russos did deliver some major surprises with Infinity War and Endgame, and they turned out to be anything but predictable, but this current path, quite honestly, is so slow burn, has made it more tedious than anything else. Then throw in all the new multiverse rules with everything from different looking variants and variations, it starts to feel like the rules are bent and or broken to suit whatever story is being told, and it doesn't feel like there's a cohesive universe being built. It's pretty critical while Marvel's telling these complex stories to ensure that the universe feels real. I know superhero universes kind of bend the rules of physics and reality, but fans need to understand that the rules defined on the screen hold throughout the whole story and won't just be thrown out at the need of one particular project. When you do these kind of things, you undermine a lot of the tension created in these rules and the reality you've set up, and I think Marvel has fallen victim to that, all while not moving the story forward very fast. Now, another thing I think Marvel needs to lean into is some of the legacy characters we got to know during the first 3 phases. Quite honestly, losing Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, and Scarlett Johansson as Iron Man, Captain America, and the Black Widow has impacted the overall MCU more than anybody was expecting. I think for Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man, it's the most pronounced. And although his story ended in Endgame with pretty much the perfect ending, if we're moving into the multiverse, it would be a great time to put a new spin on this character or other characters people actually care about. Some people have even suggested Downey returning to play a villainous variant of Iron Man, but I do suspect, and I have suspected all along, when we finally get to Secret Wars, we're likely to see some of these actors return and potentially be recast. And recasting should be another alternate possibility Marvel should embrace. Enlisting new A-list actors to work as some of these established characters might be a pretty good idea. As Marvel delves farther down the roster, a lot of name recognition starts to disappear, and although people really do associate Robert Downey Jr. or Chris Evans to their respective characters, we should probably consider that some of these characters really do need to exist in the MCU as a whole and become a staple of the franchise, and potentially writing them out was a bad idea. Now, I think along with these characters and story progression, Marvel needs to have a clear end and probably think about how they're going to wrap all this up. We know this will all culminate in Secret Wars, which could see an MCU reboot, but let's be clear, I think a lot of fans are ready to reach that point. We've had so many pieces put on the board, the story hasn't really progressed, and that end event, the big payoff, doesn't appear any closer now than it even did 2 years ago. It's not to say there hasn't been some great content, like Loki, Shang-Chi, or even No Way Home. but fans need to see the whole story moving forward, and honestly, we've only been teased with how the multiverse works, with almost no ideas on how this could possibly conclude. Add on the fact that we still haven't gotten the X-Men or the Fantastic Four, which fans really want. It feels like this whole process is being stretched out too long, and I think Marvel doing it over 3 phases this time with a massive increase in content for each phase was probably a big mistake, and they need to just shorten everything up. Now obviously Marvel's focus on quality over quantity will impact all of these things, and I think we should remain hopeful. Remember, Bob Iger took over Disney from Bob Chapek, and Bob Chapek was the one that initiated all these massive new plans and expansion of the MCU slate that was unprecedented and basically overworked everybody from the visual effects artists, the writers, all the way up to Kevin Feige himself. I have the utmost faith in Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige to right this ship. I think they have a pretty clear plan going on behind the scenes, and I think some of the shuffling going on during the strike will ultimately prove to be a massive boon to the studio because it's going to allow them to fix the holes, bail out the water, and turn the ship in the right direction. How this ultimately works out, well, we're going to have to wait and see.